Hello? Okay, now we're on. Welcome to TEAS, first of two sessions. I'm Lou Berger, it's Von Biram, and we have Matt Hartley somewhere in the ether. And hi. So we are at the IETF, as you all know, and we have a process that governs everything we say and relates to everything we say in the session and how we contribute to the IETF. If you're not familiar with it, please take a look at the Note Well URL that's at the bottom. Go there. Basically, anything you say in this session becomes part of our permanent record. We're recording both video and audio. The video is also going out to remote participants, and we do have a couple. Please make sure to use the microphone and state your name when you come to the mic, even if you come to the mic multiple times. We're taking notes via Etherpad as we usually do. Please take a look at the URL. Actually, this is the wrong URL, but it'll point you to the right one. You can also get that off the tools page or the agenda. Please contribute to that. It's very helpful, particularly if you say something at the mic. Note that your name is correctly captured and your comment is properly captured. I'm laughing at the temperature here. We have someone sitting in the front with a blanket where it's 90 degrees outside, but inside it's a little chilly. So since our last meeting, we've had no new RFCs, but we do have a couple of documents that have gone through the process or are in the editor queue. Thank you to those who've been patient with our process. Sometimes there's a lot of comments that have to be addressed as we go through the IESG, and it takes a little diligence to get through, and it does pay off in getting the documents, and we're looking forward to seeing these new RFCs. We have one document that's going through IESG processing. We don't have any adoptions or new errata that have come in since the last meeting. We're meeting twice this time. This is the first session. Thank you for coming. The second session is as shown here, and it's also in this room. Our agenda is it's pretty tight. There have been some shuffling and some changes since the first time that it was posted. The current agenda is also what's reflected in Etherpad, and so we can follow along with what's there. And that's true both for the first session and the second session, and we expect both of them to be pretty full. Oops, wrong direction. There we go. We've had a liaison and a communication that's come in. One is on the OTN standardization work plan. We had talked about doing a response to this, and we had asked, I forget who it was, Daniele, who's not in the room, to draft a response, or he had volunteered to do that. We have yet to see anything there, so Pavan has already sent a mail asking for an update on that. We've also received a communication from Etsy, and Daniele is going to talk about that remotely, so hopefully he will show at some point. We'd like to remind the working group that we have an IPR process that we follow both before adoption and then before last call. We ask that all contributors and authors directly respond. Obviously, anyone else in the working group can respond. But without a response from all contributors and authors, we don't move the documents forward. Please do utilize the list. We definitely allocate time in here in order of obviously working group documents, but also list discussion, particularly on new topics. And I think that's it for this one.
We'll look at the status of the working group documents next. These are the working group documents that are not on the agenda today. These will be covered in the next few slides. First up is the ACTN Yang document. This is the document that talks about applicability of various Yang models to ACTN. There was one revision published for this in August. Apart from fixing some editorial nits, it also addressed comments that are raised by CCAM's Transport NBI DT team. These comments are sent to the list. As far as consensus for this draft goes, the understanding was that we would wait on the generic TE model drafts to progress and then revisit this. That remains the current stance. In the meantime, if there are any reviews, please do send them in. Next is the draft that talks about GMPLS signaling extensions for shared mesh protection. No new revisions since last time. There are still some open issues that need to get addressed. There was some discussion at the last meeting about sending a liaison to ITAT, just stating that we are working on this and asking if they have any expectations from this activity. We're going to ask Italo to put that together. We haven't done that yet, and we'll take it from there. Next is the PC native IP document. There was a revision published for this. The authors do state that they have another round of updates before they can say it's ready to progress to the next state. There's also some open discussion that needs to be had about moving this from experimental to standards track. Lou and I will have further discussion on that and then make a call before we take it to the next stage. Next is the PCCC use cases document. No changes since last time. This continues to be a living document. Currently, there's no intent to take it through the publication process, but as always, we will revisit it in due course of time. For now, please keep reviewing as more and more use cases get added to this living document. Next is the RSVP RMR extensions document. No changes since last time. The authors claim that the draft is stable, but they do acknowledge there is another round of update that needs to be made. In the meantime, they're seeking feedback, so please to give it to them if you have any. Next is the SF-aware topology model draft. There were a fair number of comments received for this from Tom Petch on the list. Most of those got addressed in the last version, but there's still some outstanding issues that need an update to cover those. Once that is done, the authors are stating it can be taken to Yang Doctor's review. Next is the T metric recording draft. We did start the pre-last call IPR poll for this. Still waiting on a couple of responses. Once those are in, we should be able to initiate the last call process. The last update in this deck is for the T topology and tunnel modeling draft. This is basically the tutorial document that talks about how to use the various models that we are producing. This is again a living document. There are a few more use cases in the pipeline, so keep an eye out for those as and when they come, and send in your reviews if you have any. That's all we have in this deck. First up is an update on the various T models. Tarek?
Good afternoon. I'm Tarek. I'm giving you a quick update on the modeling drafts that we're driving in these. So the agenda is the updates, and I'll go over the open issues and the next steps for each of the documents. The first document is the TE's Yang TE. The current revision is 22. This document covers two modules, TE and TE device.yang. So the status is it had undergone a Yang doctor review on revision 21. We had received several comments, and we're working on addressing them. I'll be going over the plan to address each comment that we received on the next slide. The next step is we will be addressing the comments, as I mentioned, and after that, we'll be requesting a working group last call. So for the first module, we have received a number of comments. The first is to use the derived from or self instead of equality in when checks. This is a more elaborate, enhanced way, and we accept it, and we will be addressing that. There is a comment of using groupings for single instantiation. Commonly, you would have groupings when you want to use it multiple places. It's possible that we were thinking, and in fact, it is the case, some groupings are used externally by other documents or modules. So it doesn't appear in our module, but they're used in other documents. So this is under investigation at the moment, and we will act on it accordingly. The other comment we have is use of the leaf ref with a relative path. This makes it difficult to reuse the grouping. So the suggestion is to use the absolute path, and that's fine. We will accept that and take action on it. Consistency in the description, for example, terminate the description with a full stop, makes sense, total sense. We're going to go and update that. The metric of milli-seconds was suggested to replace it by milliseconds, and that's fine, and we'll do that. There is a comment about association object use in our model and fixing the reference. And lastly, we want to add meaningful descriptions on the RPCs, and we will act on that. The next module is the T-device. It also received a number of comments. Again, avoid the grouping if it is single used. That's fine. We will act on it. The same comment that we got about absolute leaf ref versus relative. And redundant range expression. So there are cases where we are putting a range where it doesn't make sense. It's already defined as 16 bits or 32 bits. So the range is dictated by how many, by the data type itself. So the last comment is to populate where we have RPCs and notifications. We either will remove that part if we don't need it, or we'll populate it. It's under investigation. So the second document is Yang-RSVP. Currently, it's at revision 11. It has two modules, RSVP and RSVP extended. This had undergone a Yang doctor review. We had received comments and addressed all of them, in fact, and there are no open issues at the moment. The next steps, we want to request a working group last call and take it to IESG next. So this is kind of stable document that we want to progress.
You want to discuss now or at the
end? Sure, now is good.
So do you want to, I think the first question is, do you want to progress these as a set or individually?
So specifically this document and these two modules, I think they can progress on their own. They're RSVP specific. They're not traffic engineering. They're the base RSVP. I don't think they need to wait for the other ones.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion, by the way.
All right.
And the authors, I think. Speaking for the authors. Okay. Thank you. The next document is RSVP-TE. It is covering two modules, RSVP-TE base and the MPLS. The status, there are no open issues. This hasn't been reviewed by Yang doctors yet, so we want to ask nicely for a Yang doctor review on these two modules.
We already put in the request, and it's scheduled to be done by the 15th of December.
Thank you. And I think this is the last document. It is TE-MPLS, and it has a single module there. There is open discussions in incorporating MPLS TP constructs into this module. We're working with Italo and the team to see if we need another document for this or another module, or we incorporate it in the same document. So the next steps would be to close on this discussion and see where we're headed, and we will let the working group know about what we come up with. So that's it. Thank you, and happy to answer any question you have.
Are there any reservations about moving these documents to last call? We'd like to really, I mean, these have been going on for quite a while and they're pretty mature. I know I have some technical comments that I can certainly cover on the list, and I don't think blocks last call, but we definitely want to wrap these up. So if there's any comments on them from people who have reviewed the documents, it would be good to raise them now. If you don't have comments and haven't read the documents recently, please do. And expect that we're going to have last call as soon as we get the last bits of updates from the Yang doctor. One of the big questions I had is whether to wait for that and move them as a set or move them as two sets. It sounds like you think we could probably move them as either two or three sets.
Yeah.
Or two, maybe just the two of them go together.
Yeah, at least two or maybe three.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll note there's no comments, so that's
okay.
Good.
Shafak?
Good afternoon. I'm Shifeng Liu from Water Analytics. I'm giving a quick update to two documents. One is the layer 3 TE topology model, and another one is the SRT topology models. For first, let's look at this layer 3 TE topology. So the status is that we don't have any changes since last IETF. We are still resolving the Yang doctor's review comments. So editorial changes have been completed, and we have sent our responses to the questions they raised, and we haven't heard the confirmation. So we're still waiting, and we see if they will have further questions. One question from the CCamp people, they are doing some augmentations to this model. So the question here is, how do we do the augmentation for the Ethernet and MPLS TP? I don't know if it was here, but anyway, so we have two options. We can either augment the base the TE topology model to the Ethernet and MPLS at the same level at the TE topology packet extension, which is defined in this document. And this is fine because the the topology model has this nice feature. We can do multiple inheritance. So another way to do this is we ask them to augment the TE, the Ethernet TE and the Ampere's TP models to the packet extension.
Tarek with Juniper. Hi, Shufeng. Quick question about this requirement. Just to clarify, we're asking for Ethernet TE topology. Is it because we want to set up Ethernet LSPs? And if yes, do we have a way to set up Ethernet LSPs?
And you are asking the TE topology model specific questions. Are those people here?
Good to see Huawei. Good to see Tarek again. And this has been clarified last week.
Can you lean into the mic a little bit? We can't hear you.
Well, I think we discussed in Montreal talking about the usage of the Ethernet TE topology, which is used to provide the update information after the Ethernet is configured into the underlying tunnels. Not necessarily to be an LSP, but the topology information should be useful.
Okay, so just to collect the topology of Ethernet switches and links, is that?
Right.
GMPLS can support setting up Ethernet LSPs.
Well, same thing to our other generic TE and the tunnel, right? So tunnel usually not part of the topology model.
Okay, I was
think
just
that,
trying to
that's fine. Yeah.
All right.
So the we have either option will work. So one option we require all the TE extension, the Ethernet extension and the Ampere TP must have the packet extension. The other one will make it optional. The either option can put in the packet options and make it work. So the question is, do we have any preference, or we just let the CCAM people do whatever they want to do?
Just a question. You are thinking about MPLS-TP extension because you think you don't need MPLS-TE topology, correct? This packet is enough for MPLS-TE?
We don't need to have the MPLS TE topology,
Then if you want to do TP, you have to augment the packet TE to make sure that,
That's the current situation. Unless you find something, we need to do that. So anyone has any opinions or preferences?
Huawei again. Actually, we agree. I agree with that. Both option works, but I'm not sure whether we have so far any quantitative evaluation on which whether there are some common sections as a general one, so that we can use more generic types rather than make it small pieces.
Generic types. What types? Here. So the packet extension only added a few structures for like performance monitoring and some other packet specific options. So nothing to do with the labels and the bandwidth, all the normal extension you're doing for the Ethernet. It's totally independent. So they don't interfere with each other.
Yeah, that would be good.
Right, so that's why you have this option, right? So
this is more straightforward.
Yeah. So we can talk if no other people don't have opinion. We can talk further and decide by our own.
Yeah, we can move it offline.
Yeah. Some clarification here. The packet extension we defined in this document, the TE topology packet. Which is meant to be for both Ethernet and MPLS TP. So this extension will cover the encoding types of both packet and the Ethernet specified in the RFC 3471. So we are not trying to separate them. Also, beside that, we currently have a TE working group that we have a network slicing design team, which is currently examining some of the requirements. Potentially could be applied to the layer 3 topology. If that happens, we'll incorporate them into the layer 3 topology model instead of slicing model. So that's it. So we are trying to resolve all the issues and we'll move forward. That's for this document. The next one is the SR and the SRTE. So the changes we have since last time are the alignments with the latest dependencies. So last time when we received the Young Doctor review, they had some comments on the grouping we used from the Sprint SR, common SR model. So we sent this feedback to the authors in that model, and then they agreed on the changes, and so they have put the change in their grouping, so we can pick up automatically. So in that case, we just revert the changes we did here in this model. The changes will not belong here anyway. So then we have some cleanup. Then we are continuing resolving the Young Doctor's review. We sent all the replies. Still haven't heard the confirmation yet. Then the next step will be complete all those things. And so we keep eyes on the common second routing model. Whenever they change anything, we need to do the change accordingly. That's it. Thank you.
Comments?
Yeah, Fatai speaking. So my comment is relevant to the first draft. So given that option 1 is selected besides Ethernet and MPLS-TP, are there any other packet technologies can use these packet models?
The packet, what packet knowledges? What is?
Yeah, so besides Ethernet and the TP, any other packet technologies can use this kind of,
Currently, we don't have other augmentations and other uses for now. So
it seems there's low value to choose the option 1.
I think there's the IP native.
IP native
covered already in the packet.
IP native. So it's that would be that's covered in the layer 3 TE, right? So
okay.
Yeah.
Actually, Fatai, what other technologies are you thinking about?
I don't know. So I just say this kind of picture because, for example, if this, option is selected besides Ethernet and MPLS-TP, there's no other, technology can use this kind of model. So why we chose option 1?
Well, I was waiting for you, since you're CCAM chair, I was waiting for you to bring in some technologies from there. I know there's some thought on, at least some thought on wireless related to microwave, but that's not really a packet technology. But there is this BOF that's happening tomorrow on RAW where they're talking about other wireless packet engineered technologies. So I didn't know if that's the way you were going, but there might be something there. I wouldn't be surprised if the topic that's talked about in RAW actually ends up in your working group, if not its own. But
okay. Anyway, I think maybe we can have more discussion on the CCAM list and to get more feedback. Anyway, we should make a decision on these 2 options, right?
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's go there.
Yeah, so one of the things that's causing me keeps me having some discomfort with the second document, and this comes from other documents that are showing up in like DebtNet, is what is really SRTE, and do we have a definition of it? And it sort of scored on the edge with SRTE topology, because we're not saying what service is going over the topology. So I think we're okay there. But if so, this is an informal question to the working group: is how many would be interested in working on a definition of SRTE and what that would mean? Do we have policy, SR policy, but not a good definition of SRTE? Keep your hands up for a moment. So there's probably enough people to actually work in that. So one of the questions for the spring working group chairs is, do they want to do it in their working group or in here? So thank you for that information. That's a nice data point.
All right, thank you.
Where's the clicker? Oh, nice.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm going to present an update. I'm Sergio Bellotti speaking from Nokia. I'm going to present an update regarding a young model for part computation request. Well, I'm sorry, we have some problem about the uploading of the drafts. Because there is a pending issue with the TIA tunnel that apparently was expired. I sent the email to both of you, and yesterday we succeed to upload because now there is alignment. So I sent the message and also the text via email for the working group about the changes before there. Okay. So the changes as basically providing a proposal, not a young model modification, regarding one of the basic issues that remain in the list. So to have the possibility to request path computation for protected tunnel. So the issue, the proposal is addressing two types of scenarios. So the request to compute both working and protected path for a tunnel that not exists yet, so a greenfield situation, or to optimize the situation and to compute the protection path to add protection for an existing tunnel. We, for this proposal, we took into account the feedback that we had in the previous meeting about this issue regarding the fact that to have only one request that encompass both protecting a protected path, or to have two different path requests within the same RFC. And the feedback from working group was this option. So this, in fact, is the table that we prepare, and so we went to the option 2, and in this proposal, what we made is that we addressed the issue that the disadvantage that for option 2 apparently is related to this option. So the need to define association between path that has to be used in the same tunnel and the duplication of tunnel parameters per tunnel in case you have multiple requests. So basically, the proposal permits first to associate multiple path requests that is intended to be used within the same tunnel. And the second is succeed to avoid repeating the settled tunnel per tunnel based for any requested path. And these consequently permit the server to easily understand what are the attributes that is related to the tunnel and what is the attributes that is configured per path. Okay, we do not made yet the Young modification because first we would like to have opinion of the working group on the proposal. So this is the basic Young tree that would be as a consequence of our thoughts. And we basically add the tunnel association structure that is, in fact, is permit to associate paths that are or referencing an existing tunnel. So when computing the protection to a protection path to an existing tunnel, or referencing an entry in a new list in which we provided the list of association identifier, and so when the tunnel does not exist, you can have this association identifier between the different requests to associate which are to be associated with the same tunnel. At the same time, in the list are reported also all the list of the tunnel attributes that is related to that tunnel to avoid the problem to repeat for any computed path the configuration of the same attributes. The tunnel association also provides information about about the role of the path request is for, so if it is a primary or secondary path. And the another part of the possibility is to have this structure, so the tunnel attributes that addressed the collection of the attributes related to the tunnel in case you have the unprotected tunnel, so you have only single path, not requested to associate any request related to the tunnel. At that point, so the server has all in the information to create a tunnel in case for within the operational data store, and we already added in the document the possibility to have this association of computed path with a tunnel that has not yet been created, and so this is the case, and the server will have all the information to know how to create the tunnel. This is also permitted to have a more strengthened alignment with the TIA tunnel model. Okay, this is the proposal. So the situation of the open issue, basically, we have still 10 open points, but 5 are still related to align with the discussion with the TIA tunnel group. Instead, the 5 are specific for path computation RPC, but 3 out of them are all related to this issue. So we think that once that we have solved it and this proposal can be provided in Young, we can have an easy path to solve also the other issue that are for bidirectional tunnel and bidirectional path with asymmetric path properties. And the other 2 issues are one in the editorial, so a review of terminology, and the other is as soon as the Young model is stable, we would like to have an example to introduce an example for path computation request. So the next step is obviously we continue operation with the TIA tunnel model authors, because we have still 5 open issues that are pending together with them, and provide guidance for technology specific, so sync up with the OTN tunnel model authors and WZone and FlexGrid, obviously. Our plan would be to require a young doctor review for July meeting. Thank you.
Hi, Tarek from Juniper. If you can go back to slide 6, please.
Slide 6.
6. Okay. So you're defining the association ID here as 32-bit number. We have defined an association, something similar to association object that we all know about. It's already defined for RSVP. But the idea you would have an association type as well. What type of association you want? Is it co-routedness? Is it diversity?
The association ID that has to permit to provide information regarding which of the requested path has to be associated with the same tunnel.
Yeah, but what kind of association is it? Is it just one-to-one mapping, or like ownership? Or is it like, I want to be diverse from this tunnel? I want the path that's diverse from this tunnel.
Direct, the association is pointing to one entry in the list below, the tunnel association list, where you provide the tunnel attributes, and then you say this path should be part of this tunnel, and then there is a role. It has to be the primary path, the secondary path, or the reverse primary or the reverse secondary. So that's the idea, is that with this path are associated by being into a tunnel, not by...
Okay, maybe I'm getting confused because with association, there is a association type. Here it's just a
association
a
to
pointer?
be in the tunnel, as part of the same tunnel.
Okay, maybe rename.
How? Have a better name?
Because it's...
okay, I see your point.
Okay,
okay.
we can take it offline.
The name is to provide information that is going to associate.
Yeah. It's confused by the term association, which implies some association objects, which is not the case here.
No, it's not the case.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe we need to better name.
Dhruv, I had the similar question because in both PSEP and TEAS we have that association, so a bit confused by that, but let's move on. The second is, why is it a choice between putting a reference to a tunnel or a tunnel association? Because now I think I get a little bit idea, because you don't think of this association as a bigger association where we can associate LSPs across tunnels as well. But in your case, you want to do it only for one tunnel. Like, is that what's happening here? That's why it's a choice?
Yes, the choice, you mean the choice for tunnel reference and association ID, this one?
My question is, why limit inside the tunnel only? Why can't path computations be associated across as well? Because in both PSEP and otherwise, we have allowed that. Is there a particular reason that you want to limit it only for inside a tunnel?
The reason is that we wanted to create the association related to the tunnel. Yeah.
In other words, what I mean is, in other protocols and in the Yang, otherwise what we have a much more generic association concept.
Okay.
Why should we use the more generic association object? Because that's something that we have already know how to use, and not define something very specific to your Yang. That's the thing that I want you to explore a little bit.
Okay.
Again, Tarek, and I agree with Dhruv here. I think we should, at least consider the association definition that we added in the tunnel model. If it applies here, it's more, elaborate, and we can take it offline as well.
Okay.
Italo speaking. We are already using the association from the tunnel model. This is because we want to associate paths which are in the same tunnel. And in the tunnel model, they are associated by the structure of the YARN model. And here they are different entries, the same path request. So you have to find another way to say these two paths are the primary and secondary of the same tunnel. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be good to clarify if this is a different association than the existing association mechanisms,
Maybe
which are pretty mature at this point.
yeah, maybe we can describe better the intention of the association.
Or rename it.
Italo speaking. I think this is a generic comment on tier and tunnel. We have basically, if I look at the latest tunnel model, we have three ways to associate paths. One by putting paths into the same tunnel, one by associating all the paths between two tunnels, this is a tunnel level association, and one at the path level when associating two paths of two different tunnels. Maybe we have to find a way where to describe this, either here or in the path on the tunnel model.
I'm trying to understand which one you mean here and what.
We need all the three, and the other two we are inheriting from. We are reusing the groupings from T tunnel, so it's implicit. And here we need to have a different way to say
the third
this
is just
one.
for the protection piece, or for something else.
Or if you have two paths in the same tunnel, you're for protection mostly.
The generic, well, we should take it offline.
Okay.
But the generic mechanisms support that already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Association type.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'll give you a quick update on set of VN Yanks model that we have. The model that we are discussing is the VN. The first model is the IETF VN Yang model. And then we have two KPI telemetry model, which augments the T tunnel model and the VN model. And finally, we have the service mapping model, which has first a generic set of mapping types defined in one Yang model, and then the L3SM, L2SM, and other and L1CSM augments those with the generic grouping. So I will go through the updates in all these models. The overall comment, we did a bit of editorial cleanup, Yang formatting, references, all the style guide changes, and thanks for everyone who gave comments there. We also moved from Word to XML, which was also a big task. And that's why if you look at our diff, everything is a little bit like, looks like the whole document is updated. Okay, so let's start with VN Yang. So we know what it is. It's just, it's a VN Yang model at the CMI. It's between the customer and operator. It gives a very abstracted view of the virtual network slice. It relies on the T topology abstract node and uses the connectivity matrices to define how the end-to-end connections are being established. We had a comment that we discussed in the last meeting, which was, can a VN be established without having the customer information? That is, I can set up a P2P VN member without attaching the customer information at the time of VN creation, and maybe have an ability to add the AP and the customer facing information after the VN is already established. So we made sure that we can support that. Of course, the VN creation already had, at the time of VN creation, you need to have something called as an AP, which is just a shared logical identifier between the customer and the operator. So in the Yang model, we allow you to create an AP with only a P information so that the second requirement can be established. So to do that, within the AP container, we added a node called PE, which can have a reference to the PE node. And via that, you can create an AP with just the PE information and later on update it with more customer information once you have it. So this kind of satisfies the requirement that we got during the last meeting. So this is how the change looks, pretty straightforward. Change, just a reference to TE node ID. So that's our first document. The next is the telemetry. This one has it does two jobs. It has the performance monitor.
Yeah, just on the previous document, there was some, I have my notes that I had some comments from the last meeting that I wasn't sure how they were addressed.
Yeah, which one?
I thought the VN Yang.
Yeah, this is the one. This is what we kind of addressed. This was what Chinwu raised. We had it in the slides. We discussed back and forth that we will handle this.
Okay.
Is there a different
So you think it's all addressed?
This one is addressed.
Okay.
Yes.
It was with Chin, right?
Yes.
Is he in the room? Do you think is that?
Yeah, he is.
Yes. Do you think that the issues are addressed?
Yeah, this is Qianwu. Yeah, I already have an offline discussion with Drew, and I'm happy with the change made actually, and just want to get a sense of the room for this model structure change. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to go. Yeah.
So the second model, which is about the telemetry, this model, we augment the T-tunnel model and the VN model with the telemetry information. Again, the telemetry information comes from T-types itself. We are augmenting it here. And we also have the scaling conditions, as the scaling conditions being set. So those are the two things that this Yang model does. We did one change. We earlier used to put the scaling condition, the operation type, which is when you have multiple parameters, how do I consider those multiple parameters, whether it is and or? We were putting it in an outer container. We moved it inside. That would allow us to have mix of and or for multiple metric types. So we can say that delay should be like this and jitter should be like this, while the bandwidth is something else. So we have a flexibility of making those changes. Another mistake maybe was there from the previous version where we were not augmenting. So now since we are augmenting, there is no need for us to have a reference to the same tunnel that you are anyway augmenting. So those two changes were done in both the TE KPI and the VN KPI model. We had one comment on the mic last time, which was about how do we can we use percentile or mean, especially coming from the stamp Yang model. We are currently relying on the performance metric attributes as defined in T types, and defining a new metric at this stage we wanted to avoid, and we could not figure out how adding it only for this model would help. So I had one small discussion with Greg that what's the next step we could do. I will continue to have that discussion. At least in the text we will add that this is just part of the problem, that we are only giving the telemetry from what we can learn from the notes. There are other techniques out there, such as end-to-end measurements, etc., which can also be applied in VN. Some kind of text I will at least add, and I will pass it through Greg. That's our current thinking when it comes to adding new metric. We want to avoid defining new metric. Again, we'll get into IPPM and other working group space. So at this stage, we don't want to go there, but we can say that this is just part of the telemetry. This is not everything. There are other techniques out there as well. Any comments on this? Okay. So that was our update.
Greg gave a thumbs up.
Okay. And the final,
Before you move off there, I have a question. It's probably for one of your co-authors, Dan, who's sitting who's in the back, who's also active on a draft in NetMod related to event condition action framework. And I'm interested in your perspective and the authors of this draft's perspective on how either that work can be applied here, or you could influence that work. Basically, that work's doing a generic mechanism for triggering actions based on events that happen on the node.
After you, Drew.
No, I want to listen what you have to say.
I'll be honest, I just walked in. I was just outside.
By the way, that's Dan King.
I'm just going to also add, as a co-author of the ECA framework proposal, that there is absolutely applicability here. If you're delegating some event and condition to a device, but it could also be in ACTN, a device might be the PNC itself that would enable some telemetry stream in the event of some condition being met, whether it's packet loss or some kind of queue issue. So yeah, I think there is some applicability.
Yeah, of course, this work is a bit more advanced, although it's very specific. It might be good to help inform that work rather than try to wait for that thing that's not even a working group document yet to be there to use.
Yeah, this is Chen Wu from Huawei, and we actually work together with ECA model draft. Actually, work on the ECA model. Actually, we did actually support this kind of logic test. We think it will be a good idea to define a basic model. We can, let this draft leverage some grouping defined in the basic model. Maybe that will be a good approach. But I haven't thought about how to realize this. Yeah.
Yeah. Since this work is more advanced, this will just help inform your work as it moves in NetMod. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So last Yang model, which is our service mapping Yang model. This Yang model does a mapping between the services and the various different TE models that we have. So you can map either to VN or TE topology or TE tunnel. And we had defined a TE and service mapping types, which is a generic container, and that is being used by augmenting various service model. We also added some things like availability and isolation requirements, which are currently not there in the service model itself, and that can be used when you are selecting and making decisions at the VN and the T topology level. So that's how your model looks. The comment that's kind of open, and we had some internal discussions. Now we want to get a little bit feeling from the room. Service model, we have an idea how to do this, but the requirement exists at the network model as well. You want to map from L3NM to whatever T tunnels are being used within my domain. So technically this mapping, what we have as a generic T and service mapping, can easily be applied to L3NM as well. And all we need to do is augment the L3NM model with the same generic grouping that we have already defined, and you could easily use it. The question would be that it's not a service, it's a network model. Do we do it here? Do we ask L3NM folks to update it there, or a new document, something like that, and whether this approach makes sense or not. So those are the two questions related to L3NM that I would have for the group. Maybe we can get a feedback on that first before I discuss the second one.
How many people are aware of the L3NM? Oh, so we have a...
Okay, we have a word there.
How many of those are not authors?
I'm not author.
Okay. Half. We have someone at the mic. Go ahead.
Yeah, Hao-Mei. I would like to clarify about the first issue. Say, this model also applies to L3NM. So are you referring to we should map the layer 3 SM to layer 3 NM, or
no?
Okay.
That's not the job of this model. This is still TE. So we are mapping L3NM. Once you have an entity that in the network model, this is my L3 VPN network. How do I map to what are the TE tunnels?
T tunnels.
Or if it is in multi-layer thing, even TE topology kind of information. So I would, in this case, not have VN. I would, when I augment, I will make sure that the VN choice cannot be taken, but T topology and T tunnel choice could still be used.
Yeah, okay. I would also have the same preference to make everything to select the T part and map to the T tunnel. Oh, thank you.
Adrian Farrell, maybe this is the opportunity for a little advert for L3NM.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Maybe this is the opportunity for a little advert for L3NM, at least to give some context. So L3NM is a recently adopted document in the Ops Area Working Group that is attempting to bridge the gap between the way a customer requests a layer 3 service and the way that the network delivers that service by partitioning the functional blocks for delivering the service and allowing the L3 service to be expressed with a few network-aware pieces. In that sense, it's very much behind the curtain, and it's unclear to me whether you would need to also do the service mapping for that, but it's also unclear to me that you wouldn't. I would suggest the thing to do is to sit with the authors of L3NM, explain to them what your service mapping does, have them explain to you what NM does, and then try to see whether that matches or not.
Yeah, and there's some issues with L3NM in that, as you said, it's unclear what the scope of it is, and when it starts bringing in things like the protocol details or the routing protocol details, it gets really confused because it's redefining things that are already in other modules, rather than referencing those. And we seem to be going in a loop here of redefining things over and over again, and this is doing it yet again. And
right,
having that sit down is probably a really good idea, and probably pull in someone from the routing working group as well, because I think there's some deconfliction there that might want to happen.
Yeah, I am sure that the intention is not to increase the entropy, but we shouldn't be redefining stuff.
We had an email exchange with Oscar and other authors of L3NM. They like the idea. They think it's needed. Even on the mailing list, this question actually came up, that whether this could be done. So at least I will follow what Adrian suggested and have a little bit more in-depth conversation, but at least at the very high level on emails, there is a consensus that this is done. This is needed. The question which I was, where should we do it? Should we keep this document, which is right in front of you, only focused on the service model, and maybe let the L3NM folks continue on to define the L3NM model plus this service mapping right there in the Ops Area Working Group? That's one approach. Another would be that we can add it here itself.
Yeah, I think keeping this working group in the loop right now is the right thing, and let's see what happens when you have the L3 NM discussion, and again, include the routing working group, because maybe it all goes there. It depends. Yeah, depending on I'm not saying what the right answer is yet.
Got it. We have a chair.
Hi, so we had the presentation of the draft in last routing working group. It went well, so let's keep collaborating.
And I had one more pending comment.
And Jeff, as chair, were you okay with the redefinition of the routing protocol details in L3NM? All right, I'll have a chair level discussion.
Not sure what redefinition. Okay. Anyway, so the last point, which is also a pending issue for us, we define a term called availability, and we don't have a good reference for it. This availability is maybe from the service availability point of view and more related to a service model. It defines service is 99% or 99.99, that kind of thing. We don't have a good reference for it. So if somebody has any suggestion or can point us to the right direction, that would be very helpful.
Greg Mursky, ZT. Yes, actually, the thing is that with the term availability, we use it colloquially, but at IETF, we don't have a definition for it. There is one RFC on microwave links availability, and I think that we've done this work in CCamp, but it defines the availability, which is very specific for this technology. I think that, and I know of some efforts that have been done to define availability for the packet switching, because the term has been defined in TDM, and because if there is no data, they fill in information. So basically, it's a constant stream. So that's why it's easy for them to express it. I don't know any viable definition for packet-based technology availability, and I would encourage to use another term.
Okay. Thank you. Good. Yeah, we are running behind at this point. Sorry for that. No, it's okay. You know, it's good to have discussion. You know, if all you're doing is presentation, we don't have to come here. But if you can go a little quicker.
Okay. Thank you. This is Yi-Ling from Huawei, and I'm presenting the draft about the interworking of GMPS control system and the centralized controller system. First of all, thank you all the authors listed in the slides. And this draft is about describing how the GMPS distributing control plane can be interwork with the centralized controller system in many different scenarios. For example, the multi-domain or multi-layer service provisioning and recovery, etc. And the main change of this version is that the first of all, we add a new method about multi-domain service provisioning, which uses the LSP stitching method defined in RFC 5150. And secondly, I add myself as an author of this draft. And this is the background of this draft. We know we have been working on the GMPS for many years, and because of the SDN, recently we introduced the centralized controller into the control plane. One of the typical architecture is the ACTN architecture. We believe that the centralized control system and the distributed GMPS control system are not competing to each other, but they can work together to make a better control of the network. So we are trying to review the previous work to see how they can do work together to make a better control of the network. And one of the most important scenarios for the multi-domain service provisioning, we are trying to wrap up with the existing methods and try to classify into several methods. The first one is about the with end-to-end ISVP sessions, which means that we run the end-to-end ISVP signaling to create a multi-domain connections, and use this end-to-end ISVP session to distribute the labels on the inter-domain link. And there are further two sub-methods. The 1.1 in the left is about just simply run an ISVP signal to create the connection. And the 1.2 in the right part is about using the LSP stitching method, and we can create each domain the LSP segment, and then use the stitching method to create LSP stitching to stitch the LSP paths together. This 1.2 is newly added in this version. And for the second method is about we start end-to-end ISVP session. So in this case, we don't need the interoperation between domains using RCVPT, but using the centralized controller system for the interoperation. Similarly, we also have two methods. The 2.1 is about if the centralized controller do not have the information of the interdomain link, the label of the interdomain link, then the node can assign the label and then use the centralized controller to distribute this label to other domains to create the end-to-end path. And in the right side, the 2.2 method, we assume that the centralized controller system can be aware of the labels on the interdomain link. In this case, the centralized controller can distribute can assign and distribute the labels on the interdomain link. So each domain can simply create the path segment in that domain. Yeah, so for the next step, we believe we are pretty done about the multi-domain scenarios, and the next step we will try to figure out how to do the multi-layer provisioning, protection and restoration, and controller reliability. It's quite a lot of work, and we want to get the feedback from the WG to help us to move this forward. Thank you.
Are you looking for input from the working group, as in more writers, or do you think your team, you have a sufficient number of people to get the work done?
Yeah, we can do that. But if anyone have comments, we are happy to hear that.
Yeah, or if someone wants to send a contribution, they could always send it to the list, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we would love to see this this work sort of move towards completion. It's pretty old concepts. We've gone actually full cycle, because when we introduced GMPLS, what we were doing was figuring out how we could displace centralized controllers.
Yeah.
So, we're going back and forth now. So, right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jayant from Siena, and actually I have a question that with respect to OAM.
Can you lean into the mic a little and also can hear your name?
I'm Jayant from Siena, and the question is with respect to OAM, if I ping this interdomain LSP, it will go across the domain, and how can I do OAM on an individual segment versus the whole interdomain LSP? I mean, if you can explain on that.
You know what? We're a little over. If you don't mind doing that on the list, it's a good discussion. But can we do it on the list? Is that all right?
Is that all right?
Okay. I mean, is it possible, or not, to do OAM on the segment as well as OAM across the LSP?
Yeah.
Is it possible?
Do you mean OAM in data plane or the configuration of OAM? That's two different things. For the OAM in the data plane, I think nothing changed, just as what we have before. And for the control plane, I think we can continue to work to see if the OAM configuration signaling can be used in this scenario. If yes, then I believe it's yes.
Okay, I'll mail my question separately.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Dan? And to be unfair, if you can go quicker.
For you, Liz. Yes. Hi. Afternoon, everyone. So, given the importance of sort of maximizing efficiency of some of this work at the IETF and using working group time efficiently, this is really, first of all, it's a relatively recent document. We started working on this, the idea at least, at the start of the year. We're into our second version. We want to try to highlight how operators can use some of the Yang models that are being developed within the IETF. We've got hundreds of Yang models, thousands of Yang models even, and what we need to do is actually show how we can combine these to deploy services. So one of the more recent discussions is how we use the ACTN framework, so essentially the functional components, the interfaces, combined with the data models to deploy packet over optical services. So these are essentially two layers, one controlled via physical network controllers for the optical domain, split into two domains that are not directly connected. Sitting on top of that, we've got a packet layer with additional sort of domain technology there managed by domain physical network controllers that are connected across an inter-domain connection. So essentially, if that's our deployment model, what we want to know as kind of operators and vendors is how we can use the data models that currently exist for providing multi-layer services, so packet over optical. And furthermore, this would be a set of procedures, the data models, what part of the data model that we will use, and then things sort of under consideration are operational and security aspects as well. So the two use cases that are currently in the document, and we didn't want to have a document that sort of boiled the ocean. We wanted sort of two specific scenarios. The first is obviously the multi-layer but multi-domain coordination, and the second use case is recovery. So when you detect failure, how do you recover from that failure, and sort of various permutations of that. So if those are the two main use cases, we've got sort of subsections of each of those. So things like discovery of existing resources, links, next hop neighbors, etc. We will actually talk about in the document what protocol mechanisms are available, how we set up the services, how we coordinate those, what data models, what part of the data models are going to be used, and in which order. So essentially, this document is a cookbook that talks about setting up multi-layer services over sort of packet and optical domains using the context of ACTN. It's a very simple topology. You see it on the slide here. So to kind of get to the point of presenting today, what we want to do is encourage more operator input. So right now we've got a good sort of blend of vendors. We've only got one operator currently. What we'd like, because this document really is to highlight how we can actually deploy these services, which data models to use, but also what gaps potentially exist as well. So please, operators especially that have multi-layer networks, and i.e. every operator potentially, please have a read of the document, see if the current scope is suitable for your environment. We already highlight in the current document what data models are candidates. We will actually have examples, code examples as well. This may be a combination of RESTconf, NetConf, so JSON and Yang. May have sort of XML schemas as well. So questions for the room, I would like to ask the chairs if we could just sort of have a quick show of hands to see who's actually read the document, especially if you're not an author. Oh, okay, let me ask a question then, thank you. So can I ask, if you're already a co-author of the document, keep your hand down, but who has actually read this document? Okay, that's great. And how many operators have read this document? Okay, it's slightly better. But so we've got sort of two operators that essentially have read the document. It would be great to get more. So really, that's kind of all I wanted to do, was just to highlight the work, let you know the scope, and we will continue to update the document. Yeah, Dhruv?
Hi, Dhruv here. I really would like if we have a little bit better, not too POI applicability, or at least in the title it is clarified what's the difference between the Young and Danielese document and yours.
So that other document essentially seems to focus more on the IP services and the service mapping on top. Although, of course, that's applicable for our document, we are kind of that lower layer optical interaction. So I think there's sort of synergistic. Yeah, they're complementary rather than competitive. But if we need to make that clearer, that's
I agree with that both documents are kind of focusing on this thing. But as a working group, how do we coordinate the two things and make sure that POI can go forward easily?
Cool.
And for the rest of
yeah. Great.
Well, that's it.
Thank you. Great. Thank you very much. We'll keep watch on the work.
Hi, I'm Adrian. It's all my fault. That's it. So we have this design team working on looking at RFC 3272, which is ages old and somewhat out of date in the way it uses terms and the fact that technology's come on quite a long way. A number of people, including the chairs, observed that many working groups are using the term TE without anything to point to. So what we're doing is a complete revision of 3272. Everything's up for grabs, but we will inevitably use a lot of old text and then update things, add new pieces, and try to streamline some of the historical material. And then the references were a bit ugly. What we learnt is don't try to get old people to learn new tricks. We picked using GitHub and Markdown at the same time, and the intersection of people who knew both tools in the design team was small, and so we didn't make a lot of progress. We also had it running as a background task, and we had a team leader who was not properly motivated, but is still open to bribes from the chairs. We also had a large team, and that tends to lead to waiting for everybody else to do something first. And then we tried various management techniques, but we didn't do public humiliation until each IETF meeting when I get to stand up. And so that works, and maybe we should do it more. The way it worked was we posted a draft, so we've actually done something, and we've updated it as well. What this essentially does is take 3272, puts it all into the new format, and tidied some pieces. A lot of the references were ugly and got cleaned up. Thank you, Loa. And we tidied some of the text and added some small pieces of new text. But that only sets us up to know that there's a lot of new work to be done. We will, I think, change our working practices and do that work. We are already 30% too long without having added our text. So anybody who is good at operating marking blocks of text and deleting them is welcome to work with us. We will need to be adding text for your favorite protocol. How we do this? The design team will meet on Thursday morning. I hope to do some actual active edits in the room, and then hand out assignments to the team. And then we will edit in the normal old-fashioned way of me holding the pen and people telling me what they want changed. And hopefully that'll be more productive. And we will do then multiple revisions to keep everybody up to date. If you're interested in this, join us by sending email to the T's list, to the design team list, or direct to me. I suggest we need at least one more substantial revision before we even talk about adoption. I know this is a targeted thing for the working group, but I don't believe that this draft is meaningful for adoption.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate the update. We have 5 minutes left for the Etsy update. Julian, I think it's going to. Get my updates. I am reloading it, and we'll see whether it loads.
Hello, good afternoon. So this presentation is likely to look a little exotic to the crowd here. So I am working in both NFV, Etsy NFV, and in IETF. So I got here because Daniele Ciccarelli couldn't present this liaison. So basically, a couple of months ago, ETSI-NAV sent a liaison to IETF-TEAS, and this is the presentation for this liaison, basically. So there are several documents. So for those who don't know, ETSI-NAV is basically the major standard framework for telecom virtualization. And there are a number of deployments in the real world. This is something that is a big deal, even though there is a lot of open source that is also competing with it. But this is something which is actually deployed in the real world. So ETSI-NAV does have a framework which is fairly comprehensive, and there are several documents that were published. The one that you're looking at here, IFA 22, was a report that tried to understand how you could connect different data centers in different locations to deploy NAV network services across those different locations. This brought the creation of a component that we call the WIM, the Wide Area Manager, Wide Area Network Infrastructure Manager, sorry. And this component is something that is being used here. We have put this in this report. And no, that's the first version of the presentation, but it's okay. I'll do without. And then we had a stage 2 specification, which is called IFA 32, which is presented here, which tried to explicit the requirements for this WIM component. And we have worked on it extensively. And today we have started working on what we call the stage 3, which is protocols and data models for the interface to this wide area controller. So this has been started already. So we have tried to assess a number of existing protocols. ACTN is prominently featured in this document. It doesn't mean that we want to approve ACTN as the interface, but at least we want to understand how ACTN fits in the picture. And of course, how, if that is how the ACTN designers and users expect the specification to be used. So the interface basics that we have on this interface are, there are 4 different sub-interfaces. One of them is for the multi-site communication services management interfaces with the typical CRUD operations, but also operations on notifications and on reservation. We have a capacity management interface with also CRUD operations, same thing, topology and topology information queries, a fault management interface, which also allows to query the different notifications for faults, and performance management interface. So this is the kind of concept that we deal with at that level on this interface. When we try to map NAV with ACTN, so we have tried in document IFA 32 to get to a number of guesses over how this could do. There is not unanimous agreement on those mapping, and if people in ACTN have some comments about it, we'd be happy to hear about it. As you can see on the left-hand side, you have this drawing that shows that the service orchestrator and network orchestrator are considered to be the equivalent to the MDSC, but in other interpretations, we think that the MDSC is actually the WIM itself. So clearing that understanding is something that you could help doing. So finally, to get to what we're typically asking for the IETF reaction, so we would like to be, ETSI-NAV would like to be informed of the relevant RFCs and internet drafts that pertain to IETF ACTN. I think it's pretty easy to do, along with the status of each of those documents and the date of completions, if any. And also, we are interested, should we identify some specific requirements over ACTN on how we can do to push them forwards to our IETF. I think I know, but the dates of the 2 IETF meetings are there. Of course, one thing that is not written there, but which is prominent interest for us, is to understand if the way that we are planning to use ACTN is what you think how ACTN should be used. Thank you.
How do you envision this exchange to take place? Sorry? How do you envision that we will communicate with each other?
So I think that the easiest way would, of course, be through shared participation. There are at least 3 or 4 people that have common participation in both IETF and ETSI-NAV. So that's the quickest way, I would say. Yeah. But there's a need to identify someone in IETF that would at least take a look.
So generally, we at the IETF look at documents. So if you have a document, some description that you can contribute here,
the liaison
that
text
would be very easy way to
So
facilitate
the text
that.
of the liaison statement that was sent contains the links to publicly accessible documents from ETSI-NAV. If you
So
want,
in that case, you would be asking for us to comment on that, and the way that we would do that is see who is interested in participating. If you submitted an internet draft, that would be something that the working group would actually definitely look at. So just keep in mind how the process works. The other suggestion is to talk with, I think it's the IAB that manages relationships with other organizations. I don't believe there's a relationship between the IETF and ETSI, and having a formal relationship might help.
I think there is a formal relationship.
Okay.
We haven't exchanged lots of liaison, but this is the first real one where there is meat.
Yeah, so I went looking for the definition, that identification of a formal relationship, and it doesn't seem to be posted. So we can talk about that offline. We have a couple of comments on the floor.
Adrian Farrell. So first, I think it's really good news that ACTN is reaching out beyond this working group. So thank you for that. Thank you for communicating and pointing out the work. And I think you're right that the most efficient way of achieving progress is by mutual participation. You may find it hard to get people to go to even more standards meetings, so emails are good. Be careful of the formal relationship, formal liaison thing. There is no, as Lou says, there is no formal relationship between the IETF and ETSI at the moment. That would take time to set up, and sending a formal request for a formal response will fall into the quagmire. What you want really is an individual to be sending a mail to the T's saying, we're doing this stuff, does this look right? And getting other individuals to comment back. That's the effective way to make progress, not asking for the IETF's formal consensus opinion on something.
Okay, this is good guidance. Thank you.
Reza from Nokia. Another thought about this interface, if I understood correctly, the interface is trying to basically address the connectivity between the virtual network function in different data centers. The upper layer is a request in the connectivity. The new initiative that we have on the network slicing design team, the interface that we are try to address, I think could be applicable here as well. The upper layer is requesting so-called transfer slice or connectivity, which are the logically independent connection that we want to do, and this might be another way to do this, the WIM interface.
Yeah, I think it looks like it's pretty close to what's needed. ETSI-NAV itself is pretty oblivious to slicing, because slicing is supposed to do it on a higher level. But still, we do carry the network slice identifiers into the interfaces that we use.
I'm sorry to cut the conversation short. We're actually 3 minutes over. We have an IAB member behind you, so I don't know if he's going to talk from that standpoint or...
No, standpoint is, in my previous life, I participated in ETSI, and leadership of ETSI doesn't recognize IETF as such. So saying that we have a relationship with ETSI would be deceiving. What you see here is particular ISG trying to work with IETF. Would be great to establish this relationship, but it doesn't really exist.
And we certainly would be welcome any participation here. So
absolutely, yes.
It's the formality that makes it a little problematic. Last question.
Yeah. Just going on the comment from Reza. I'm Luis Contreras from Telefónica. Just to say that considering this IFA 017 is on the roadmap of the API document that we are managing in the design team for network slicing.
Okay, so Daniele has a comment on Jabber. This will be the way we end. He says this has nothing to do with slicing. So if you want to have a conversation more to learn more, we can take it to the list and get the conversation going about with different individuals having good conversation.
Absolutely, this is welcome.
All right, great, thank you. We will see you back, not the next session, but the one after that. And we'll be back here 5:10. Thank you. No, it would be nice if it was.